Stop the cap.
Theory is very, very important. It provides a way of course, of conceptualizing where you want to go and why you want to get there and what your endpoint is, a way of measuring your progress, a way, again, of bringing yourself back on task when you might have deviated for whatever reason or not, you see. I see people today, and I've been around the country in a number of places, who, say, for instance, have manhood training programs. They see the violence in our cities and so forth, and they get these grants or they got something else, and suddenly they want to transform young black men. And that's a worthy idea. And this must happen if we are to transform our community. But again, you have to ask, transform them into what, for what reason, to what end, you see. It's not enough just to give these young men African values, if that's what you're about, or to just provide them with another orientation in the world, if this is done in a vacuum, if this is not connected ultimately to the whole movement of African liberation and revolution. Values are not things you just hold and act on. Values at some level must be reinforced. They must be rewarded. If you train our young people into African values and into certain manhood values and leave them there, where they're still jobless and they're still unemployed and they're still oppressed, you're going to find yourself with a situation where sooner or later they will reject those values, you see. And consequently then, you need to see how that training is integrated with economic development, political development.
Scott, a part of this that you've addressed is the lack of sex, right? These guys are not having the type of relationships that young men of a different era would be having.
Look, we don't like to talk about it. We hear the word sex and our brain fires a bunch of different places. But think of, I mean, the whole shooting match, the whole reason we have an economy, the whole reason we're focused on creating a more prosperous, secure nation is such that we can all recognize what is the key to a rewarding life. And that is a series of deep, meaningful relationships. And core to that, or anchor to that, and I'm not saying you have to have this to be happy, is a productive, loving relationship with a partner. And you can look at the most unstable, violent societies in the world, and they all have one thing in common. They all have a disproportionate amount of young men who have no economic opportunity and also have no opportunity for relationships. And if we're going to have an honest conversation, we need to have an honest conversation. Sex and companionship are huge motivators and guardrails for young men. They put on a shirt, they blow dry their hair, they get their act together, they get a job. So the attributes, the peanut butter and chocolate of behaviors between masculinity and femininity make for a better world. And again, that's not to say that people along the middle of that continuum don't deserve the same respect and the same dignity. But most households prosper when there are risk-aggressive, rambunctious, more prone to action attributes of masculinity in concert with more thoughtful and more loving femininity. And when men aren't engaging in relationships with women, and women can't find men they find, quite frankly, sexually attractive, we're in trouble. The greatest innovation in history wasn't the computer chip, it wasn't the iPhone, it was the middle class. And the thing that gave birth to the middle class was 7 million men returning from war who were given jobs and money and low interest loans, and quite frankly, demonstrated the heroics and the economic security to be very attractive to a lot of women. And we had the baby boom and the inspiration and the formation of the greatest entity of good in the history of mankind, the American middle class. Sex, companionship are key. And 1 in 3 men under the age of 30 in the United States has not had sex in the last year. And quite frankly, that as an adult is when they become bad citizens. It's no one's obligation to service them, but we need more economically and more emotionally viable men such that we can have more household formation.
shit on for no grade. Fuck out here, all them niggas.
And we still out the drink.
And we on our block, nigga. Off of 8 walk, nigga. Fuck you about, nigga.
Masked up, suited up, ayy, catch him by that stove, up the pole, shoot it up, ayy, switch up on the Glock, make him hop, double dutch, ayy, rumble over cold, he got 2 poles, double dutch, ayy, Goosey, that's my dog, he a catch, bite you up, ayy, hit a cut, light him up, ayy, don't hype him up, cause he a die, how your whole block cry, his balloons in the sky, now the ops want me dead, so I tell him come try, but I slide first,
man, free holiday, man, free fun, free
like a track star, I'm on my block, really running shit. I do this shit in real life, boy, this shit is not a skit. Remember putting tape up on the mag just to make it fit. I remember sliding every day, I wasn't at the park. I ain't had no lighter, but I really had to make it spark. Keep that eye on me like my real name was Tony Stark. All you see is spark, spark, spark. I'm trying to leave a mark. They say they on they block, it's time to slide, fuck them up. Ayy, look on walking up, masked up, suited up. Ayy, catch him by that stove, up the pole, shoot it up.